In our recent move from Northern Virginia, Bill and I, well, we prepared. Now, I'm an experienced Navy wife, and I knew the military moving drill. Rather than work up to the last minute at my church at First Congregational, Washington, D.C., I thought I'd devote some time to unpacking the ministry experience while packing up our personal belongings. During the few months I read a book by Marie Kondo. It was called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. Are you familiar with it? Yeah, it was on the bestseller list, might still be. Well, Kondo invites people to evaluate the things they accumulate. She claims that the stuff that we accumulate creates an obstacle to our experience of joy. So with the book in hand, I prepared with diligence. My first decision included assessing all of our accumulated furniture. I had furniture from my grandparents, which I immediately knew brought me joy, and I would keep that. But my next step was everything else. Now, as I glanced over our pieces, I picked up my cell phone. I thought, oh, 5 of our adult children, they will surely want this stuff. So I called each one of them individually, and unfortunately, nobody wanted anything. They didn't want my 7-foot-tall bookcases, or my old leather sofa, or my mother's mink stool. Can you imagine? It was respectable. So embracing this shock of rejection, I called the Goodwill, and they came for our first pickup. Then I examined the accumulation of my belongings again, and I thought, I can do better than this. I'm going to downsize further. Now, just to explain, Bill and I have a blended family. We had of 6 children who used to visit us like 10 days. Well, it was more like 15 days during the month, right, Bill? So when they came, we had to be prepared for them. So we had any number of pieces of furniture, futons, side tables, linens, and all of this, because we thought that they would visit us in Northern Virginia all together, just like they had in the past. But we found out our kids didn't even really like each other. And they had no interest in sitting around the dinner table with us all together. So overwhelmed with this reality, I had the implications to deal with, and I was down there with 3 futons, 2 twin beds, linens, any number of end tables, our own little problem, and need I mention it, it's called books. Bill and I, both seminarians, had our own share of books, but I also had the donations from Gordon Baker and Harper Welsh. Lovely books. What was I going to do with my volumes of books? Not to mention the photo albums. Remember the scrapbooking craze of the 80s and the 90s? Do you remember? How we put everything in a scrapbook before there was a cloud? Well, what was one to do with 30 scrapbooks filled with photos of people I don't even remember? So I turned to my new preparation guru, Marie Kondo, for advice, and she tells her readers, much as John did, prepare. Put your photos in small shoeboxes instead. But not before you ask, does this photo, every individual photo, does it spark joy? I took an entire week, possibly 2, to look over my 30 photo albums of all of my personal history, the marriage that ended in divorce, the children who are now adults, my beloved pets, my parents who are no longer with me, the churches I've worked in, the Christmas pageants with the children, over 21 years of those, friends who have come and gone, houses where I no longer live, blended family members who, if you remember, didn't want my stuff. I even found a photo of me in college with this goofy leather hat, but I kept it because it was a good hair day. I practiced her advice, Ms. Kondo's. I held up each photo and I said, does this photo spark joy? Well, at first, I did this work rather tentatively. I lifted each photo carefully, with the corners, and I patted the pages back. But by the time I hit photo album number 6, I was done with it. I began to slap open the album, rip the thing out, leave the duplicates. What were we thinking with duplicate photos, by the way? And the negatives behind. And I'd ask myself the question, spark a joy? If yes, I would put it in one of the three boxes. I'd put it in my box, or my daughter Emily, or my daughter Melissa. And later I thought, Bill might want a box. Oh, he's so gonna thank me later. And I put his pictures in there. I prepared our stuff. And while I did that, Bill prepared the logistics of getting ourselves and Minnie, our dog, across the country. He did that 3 or 4 times. But in the meanwhile, I kept sorting. If you feel the joy, then you keep the photo in your tidy shoebox, Marie Kondo reminded me. Now her voice is in my head. If not, bless and release. Now, I wonder if Marie Kondo realized that St. Ignatius of Loyola used this same method with the early Christians. He would suggest to them when they were doing a spiritual examen of their conscience, hold what gives you life and bless and let go of the rest. Well, joy and life are very connected. Hold what gives you life, for her, was hold what gives you joy. But there's something I know for certain. Neither Marie Kondo nor St. Ignatius had an ex-husband. Obviously, selecting photos with an X in them requires, a keen spiritual perspective. Some of my photos have little holes where I cut him out. Very satisfying for me. So by now, even the hole in the photo brought me some joy. After 4 months, all was packed on Douglas Street in Northern Virginia. All of my organized tubs lined up, including the ones Bill spray painted for whatever the reason. And there were 4 strong movers showed up at our door, hired by the United States Navy. Bill and I and Minnie, our dog, each of us with our own small bag, hopped in the car and began our drive across country. It was supposed to be a planned and leisurely trip. We had this idea we would do morning walks with Minnie, and then we'd do our driving, and then we'd arrive early in the afternoon, and we'd swim in the pool at the motel. Then we'd have a craft beer to celebrate our excellent planning, and then we'd play some gin rummy. It was just a great idea until we hit Kansas. We woke up on day 3 at 4 in the morning in Kansas and decided simultaneously, this is nuts, let's just get going. Because it turned out the only thing sparking joy for us was getting to our destination in Carlsbad, California. Oh, and that Minnie really, she got her own bed at every motel room, and she just loved it. So it turned out that driving toward our destination was what was motivating us. It seems the careful work of asking, does this spark joy, does this bring you life, had made its way into my daily living. What can I say? Kansas brought no joy. So in the car we tumbled, bag and baggage, and the reluctant Minnie, who did not want to give up her motel bed. We arrived in Carlsbad 2 days early. The moving van showed up in a couple more days, and the boxes and the furniture started rolling off their van. Bill stood in the garage. He was pointing in directions. A box would go here, and this would go there, and upstairs or downstairs, we had all our rooms labeled, and a 12-page list, like a large bingo card provided by the movers. They would yell out from the sticker on the box, 37 red, and Bill would say, got it, and point. All of our stuff, this is not a horror movie story, all of our stuff arrived just as planned. There wasn't a problem. 15 hours it took us to unpack that first day, and then the 5 guys called me into the living room and they said, ma'am, where do these bookcases go? Well, I shook off the ma'am, but I looked around the room and I looked down at my schematic. It was plain to me, the bookcases were not going to work in any of the locations I had carefully measured. The measurements, in case you wondered, were accurate. The bookcases had not grown taller in the van over 10 days. But what I had not considered was how the bookcases would feel in that particular space. I didn't realize they wouldn't bring me joy or life in the new setting. I didn't realize the bookcases themselves would take over our new living space so that I would feel oppressed, stifled, and controlled by their presence. As the 5 confounded men stared at me for an answer to the problem, I concluded that the 8 floor-to-ceiling bookcases that looked so great in our basement room in Virginia had to go. They may have fit years ago, but they didn't work now. And then what about the 50 boxes and cartons filled with the books? They were going to have to go too. So here's where I have my choice. This is where I'm going to throw my little fit, right? All that planning. It would have been a great scene, too. I could have wailed about it. You know, my books, my precious books given to me by people who were important in my life. They were my friends, the books. People fail me, but books don't fail. Books brought insight in times of despair. The books, if you will, helped me make the rough places plain and the crooked straight, at least in my life. Hold what gives you joy, I heard in my head, and it was kind of sinking into my being. So I ripped the first carton of books open, and I delved in there and picked up a book. And in a whimper, I said, "Does this book bring me joy?" Surprisingly, because of the practice and the preparation all those months, the decision was really simple. I flung it into the box of discards, and so began the process. Bill and I worked through 50 cartons of books because the practice of holding what sparks joy became a habit with these incredible benefits. I released what did not bring me joy, but you know what's left when you do that? Everything you love. So the next day, Bill called someone to pick up the extra books, the bookcases. They were donated to a self-help center. He made 5 trips with his car loaded to the Carlsbad Library. The Friends of the Library gladly accepted our donations. Prepare the way of the Lord, says Isaiah, or get ready, repeats John. So pilgrim friends, shall we prepare? Can we choose what brings us a spark of joy? If you choose to embrace the whole baby in the manger story here at Christmas, if it brings you a spark of joy, I suggest you go for it. Now, if you want to bah humbug the situation, it's overly sentimental. We have this place of cynicism in us that helps push back a certain seasonal darkness that overcomes many of us this time of year. Do it upright, people. Fully embrace your sad heart, because it's covering that beautiful, cynical self that's inside. And if you prefer to delve into the historical Jesus reading while debunking the mythology of the season, I direct you to the Friends of the Carlsbad Library. They have lots of new books there. Over 200 volumes of used books for you to consider. As for myself, I'm a Madeleine L'Engle person. I really embrace the glorious impossible. The baby, the parents, the manger, the angels, the motley mess of human beings and characters with all of their mixed up metaphors. I embrace that glorious impossible because I believe impossible can happen after all. God can get me to release hundreds of old books and photos, then God can make anything possible with hope and a little imagination. So the words today I leave you with are one word, prepare. Make room for God. Hold what brings you that spark of pure joy, life, and then bless and release the rest. Amen.